Welcome to the Jeff Knows Inc. Entrepreneurial Podcast with your host, Jeff Lopes. Jeff has over 2 decades experience as a serial entrepreneur, building brands like Kimura from his home basement to a multi-million-dollar global brand that has sold over 250,000 pairs of boxing gloves. Jeff's here to educate, guide, and drive you on the process of bringing your ideas and dreams to reality with the inspiring stories from some of the top business minds.
Welcome to episode number 65 of the Jeff Knows Inc. podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Lopes. Excited to have on our show today, Clinton Sparks. Clinton just released a book, How to Win Big in the Music Industry. We're going to talk life. We're going to talk family. We're going to talk his upbringing. Tons of stuff. Incredible story. Incredible individual. Sit back, everyone, and enjoy. We are live on the Jeff Knows Inc. podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Lopes. We got a special guest from LA, Clinton Sparks. This guy's got a resume left and right. Worked with the who of who in the music industry. Out with a book. Tons of businesses. We're going to talk about a lot today. So first off, Clinton, say hi to our audience.
What's up, everybody?
So we were actually talking prior to going on air about Clinton. We're talking about fatherhood and being present as a father. And this is something I'm very strong on, something Clinton's very strong on. So we're actually going to start the podcast a little different today. We're actually going to start off going by Clinton's, I guess, upbringing with fatherhood and all that. And then we're just taking into business. There's so much we're going to talk about today. Let's start about that. You were talking prior of your upbringing when your dad left. And I know it's a kind of weird way to start the podcast, but I think it's going to bring into the whole story of who you are as a man.
Well, yeah, I mean, we were talking before, just candidly talking to one another here. And you were telling me your story about all the work you put in for your son. And I was thanking you for being one of those men that are present and that are there and care for their children. And I'm a big advocate against men that do not do that. I do not like deadbeat dads. So, we were sharing that in common. And then I was starting to tell you about my relationship with my dad and how, he was an alcoholic or is an alcoholic and left when I was 5. And then I lived with my mom, single mom. And then in 15, my mom sent me to my dad in the suburbs. I grew up in the city in Boston and, was always lived in rough neighborhoods. And I was getting in trouble with the law a lot. So my mom kept having to get me from like the police stations and was finally fed up and was like, "You're going to live with your dad." And I was like, "I don't want to live in the boondocks. I'm not moving out into Hickville." Right. So, I'm a kid like in the hood wearing like Adidas tracksuits. And then she sends me out to the suburbs where they're all listening to like Bon Jovi, right? and Guns N' Roses and shit. Right. So I go out there and culture shock, obviously. So then, I'm with my dad. My dad's like, full-blown alcoholic when I was a teenager. So dealt with that. I went to live with him. And then, when I was 18, we had the big kind of father-son fight. Well, I'll tell you the one thing so I had resentment for my dad because I was sexually abused for many years in my house from a man that my mom had staying with us. So, that and then being bullied and then being lonely and then not having anybody to teach me anything because my mom had to work all the time. So no disrespect to my mom. She had to do what she had to do. But every boy needs a man to help him growing up. And so I'm living with him. And then one of the things he would say a lot was when I would get in trouble at school or something, he would say this one line that would piss me off. And it was, "I didn't raise you that way." So, one time we had a fight. I'm like, "You didn't fucking raise me, Dad." And then he looked at me and got pissed off. My dad's got a real chip on his shoulder too, because he had a rough childhood. He went to Vietnam. And so my dad's a tough prick, man. So he's like, "I didn't raise you." And then we got into that big fight. And then I'm like, "When I grow up, I'm going to be a way better father than you." And he was like, "Yeah, you'll see when you grow up, life changes and da-da." I was like, "Whatever, F you. And then we were never going to talk again. As far as I was concerned,
How old are you then? 18?
I was 18, yeah. So then then at like 20 years old, I started thinking about my dad, and I wanted my father to be in my life. So when I started thinking about, what happened to him that didn't allow him to be the father that I needed him to be when I was young, when I cared enough to look into that, I realized the tumultuous childhood that he had. He was also sexually abused. His father used to beat the shit out of him, and he gets sent to Vietnam as a kid. You never drank in your life. You come back an alcoholic. So there's all these things that I realized that turned my resentment into empathy. And so as soon as I realized, like, damn, man, this dude went through all that shit, I went back to him, and we had a conversation. I hugged him and forgave him, and then my dad was my best friend for the next 20 years, right? And then last year we had a falling out, and now I'll never talk to that dude again. It's funny, when you think about it, it's funny how many relationships you have to be the one with the emotional intelligence and the EQ and the patience and the understanding that person's broken and they don't have the same tools in their toolbox as I do to overlook or not get emotional over shit. So it was almost like I was the dad in the sense where, not to say that he wasn't, sound enough to educate or have some important things to teach me as I grew up, but I would have to tiptoe around him. Put it this way, when I lived with the dude and I was a teenager, I'd have to call him and ask, Dad, is it okay if I have a Coca-Cola in the fridge? You know what I mean? He had this weird, I don't know, right? So, that's also his childhood that made him who he is, right? What kind of 15, 16-year-old has to call and ask to eat something out of the refrigerator? You know what I'm saying? So I don't think he ever really understood how to really be a dad. Do you know what I'm saying? He would treat me like a roommate. Yeah. You know what I mean? More than a dad. So then
he never seemed to accept you as a son in a way, almost.
I don't know, man. I've done so much for this dude. I mean, I'm an awesome son, right? And even one of the most recent things I did for him. By the way, do we want to talk about this?
Yeah, let's just talk. Let's talk, man. This is real,
one of the most recent things I did for him, the year before we had a falling out, and I'll tell you why we don't talk anymore. But so he hasn't been to California, which is where I live now, and I'm from Boston, since training for Vietnam, which is, I don't know, 70s, right? Yeah. So I say, hey, come check out my new house. Come see how I'm living out here. Come hang out with the family. I'll buy you a ticket. So, I go to Boston to get him, and then we fly first class out here. He's never flown first class. So as we're flying, we go up in the air. I had already set up with the airline attendants to give him an acknowledgement on the speaker, for a Vietnam vet, a war hero. So, she gets on the mic. She goes, I really like a round of applause from the whole aircraft for George Sparks, who's a Vietnam vet. He's a war hero, blah, blah, blah. And everyone, the whole plane gives him a round of applause. Now I'm doing it because me and my dad are buddies. So I'm doing it kind of yeah, dude. You know what I mean? And this dude literally breaks down and emotionally collapses. And he can't even compose himself for 30 minutes. People are coming up, asking to shake his hand, wanting to take pictures with him. And he's just he can't even compose himself. And I'm like, what's wrong, Dad? Why aren't you happy? Everyone's cheering for you. This is an awesome moment. And by the time he's able to muster out any words, he says, man, I'm getting emotional. He goes, I've waited 50 years to be welcomed home. So, that was really touching.
That's beautiful.
And sad, to know that, him along with so many other vets.
Yeah, that's I think you're hitting the nail on the head right there. It's how many thousands or even be honestly millions of around the world, it's not even the US, around the world, that are they don't get the acknowledgement, the respect, the care when they come back they put their lives on the line for a flag, and it's crazy. Like I'm getting emotional listening to you. I got get goosebumps on my arms. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah. So in that moment, it really opened up my eyes to like how many people feel the same way he feels.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like, it really made me sad to know that he carries us around like so many others, of like not really feeling appreciated or loved or accepted. And obviously my dad, everybody has their own story. Some guys maybe came home to a loving family that missed them, right? Or some guys may have lost a friend when they were over there. My dad's story is pretty harsh. And, it's funny because my dad, to go backwards when we were during the good times, my dad never talked about Nam. He never talked about stuff like that. And then one day we went to dinner and I asked him about it. And he kind of pushed the topic away. But then this one day I finally was like, tell me this. And then he finally told me the story. And it's like insane to realize, like, he never got any mail from anybody, like when he was over there. So every time, like, I guess when you're, in your sleeping quarters or whatever, people would get mail every week. No one ever wrote him. So he was super lonely. Then when he came home, nobody was at the airport waiting for him. So he ended up taking a taxi home to get home to a house where nobody was there. He didn't have the key to get into his house. And then he climbed up onto the second floor porch to try to break in. And the banister on the porch broke, and he fell 2 stories and landed on his back. And when he tells the story, it's really moving how this was the really profound part. He goes, I went through all this fucking shit. And he goes, and I'm going to die trying to break into my own home that no one's there waiting for me to come home from a war. You know what I mean? So like,
that's crazy.
It was just like, oh my God. You know what I mean? And
yeah. Let me jump in there, Clinton. It brings it back to exactly what you were talking about when we started this podcast, is people's stories. You'd never known so many stories. You could look at somebody, walk down the street by somebody, and you'll never know truly what they've been through, right? And sometimes that empathy is being able to be, like you said, the bigger man, and being the empathy to understand that and say, hey, you know what, let's, you open up your doors to your dad again, was obviously pretty amazing, right? Sorry about that. Just continue. I just wanted to say that.
The one other part of that story I wanted to share is, after the story I told you about how he had the big fight at 18, I was like, I'm going to be a way better father than you. Yeah. So then fast forward many years later, I have my son. I have a 16-year-old boy named Jack and a 19-month-old daughter named Sophie. Yeah. So I have Jack. And one day my dad and I go to dinner. I think Jack's maybe like 4 or 5. So we're driving home. He's going to drop me off after the dinner. He starts to pull over. And I'm like, what are you doing? Why are you pulling over? He goes, I got to tell you something. I'm like, you can't drive and talk? You know what I mean? Like, no, I got to tell you something important. So I'm thinking, oh, shit, is this dude going to tell me he has cancer or something? So he pulls over and he just sits there for a minute. My dad's a very emotional dude. Like, he cries like all the time. Like, he's hurting. So we're sitting there. I go, what's wrong, Dad? You all right? And, he's kind of sitting there shaking his head. I can see his eyes watering up. And he puts his hand on my shoulder and he looks at me and he goes, I just want to tell you you're a better father than I. Sorry.
Oh, no, this is beautiful. Like this, you know what? You're being real. And I love, God, we just met essentially a couple minutes ago, and I feel like I've known you for so long. So I continue if you could, man. This is amazing. I mean, stories like this are real raw, but there's so many people are going to connect to you and connect to this story because there's people that've been through stuff very similar. So I love it. Honestly, everything you're saying, Clinton, everything. Go continue, buddy.
He just said, you're a better father than I was. So the power in that is not the, yay, I'm an awesome dad. The power is in that argument I had when I was 18 and I said, I'm going to be a better father than you. The fact that he held on to that for so many years, to then come back and say, you're a better father than I was. It's pretty profound that what I said stuck to him for
All
that
those
long.
years.
And to be honest, I am a better father than he is, but you learn from, when I was a kid, I was very analytical. I assessed everything. I always, from what kind of a man girls like, from what kind of a kid gets bullied, and I'd always watch. So I always paid attention to like what a good father should be, especially because I didn't have one around. So since I was 10 years old, my two biggest goals in life were to be a great dad and to make people happy. And I think you share some of that with me.
Yeah.
And then to connect to that theory and how it all kind of ties together, when my son was about 8 or 9, I was traveling all the time, DJing around the world. So me and my son are best friends since he was born, like best friends. Like people would even say like, you're his father, not his friend. I'm like, well, whatever. So I'm talking like, I'm a grown man running around, diving, jumping in ponds, like,
I'm gonna jump there for 2 seconds. My son's 12 years old, and he's my workout partner. We work out 4 times a week, lifting weights and workout, and we jog together. Like he's with me 24/7. Like I love that. I love that part.
Yeah. He tells me everything. He tells me things that no kid tells their dad.
I love it.
You know what I mean? So because we're best friends, right? So, I was traveling, and I call the house. And I'm like, hey, dude, I'm gonna be home this Thursday, man. I can't wait to see you. He's like, oh, sick, Dad. I can't wait to see you too. And I'm like, we're gonna do this. We're gonna do that. We're gonna have a sleepover. And then I go, and he's really excited. And then I never asked this question before, and something made me want to ask. And I go, hey, dude, what do you miss most about me when I'm gone? And he paused for a second, and then 5-6 seconds go by. I go, Dad, you just make everything happy. And I was like, I won. Like I won both goals with one person. So I got in my house, I have a big frame in typewriter font. You just make everything happy, Jack Sparks. And it's framed out in my house. Cause it was probably like, I had Grammy nominations. I've sold millions of records. I've worked with the biggest artists in the world. I've built multi-million dollar companies. I've worked, with everybody. I've done so many fascinating things, and there's not anything anyone can say to me that would be more powerful or meaningful than, Dad, you just make everything happy. How can you be in a bad mood looking at that sign? You know what I mean?
One thing I always say, Clinton, is kids just want to be loved. That is the biggest thing I think parents miss. And I find with entrepreneurs, and that's actually one of my journeys right now. One of my little purposes I'm trying to push away is connecting fathers and entrepreneurs and learning how to balance their lives. And I find kids just want to be loved. They just want to be with you. When my kids do anything special, whether they graduate, they do something in a sport, anything special, I don't reward them with a gift. I reward them with time with me. And I'm saying, like my daughter, my daughter's 14. I grab my daughter and like, you know what? You did amazing. Let's go spend the day with Dad. Let's go have lunch together. Let's go talk. And I love and I reward them, and they appreciate that, because that's their sense of accomplishment is being, I give them as much love as I possibly can. And I think a lot of parents miss that boat where they think their kids are happy with a gift, happy with materialistic items, and they don't realize that they just want to be loved. They just want to be around you. I just did a post the other day. There's a stat, and I don't know how real it is, but it says 80% of the time you spend with your kids are before the age of 18 throughout their life. So don't miss that boat. I tell parents all the time, don't miss that boat. Try to spend as much time as you can with them. I love everything you're doing, brother. Everything you're doing.
Funny, to your note, I kind of do the opposite. Whether he does good or bad, like the love and time.
Oh yeah, 100. Yeah, I didn't mean it that way. Yeah, I meant.
I know you didn't mean it that way, but I meant it like there's times that like I'll be angry and upset with my son about something, and I'll have a stern talking to, and then 5 minutes later I'm like, hey, you want to go get something to eat or something like that? And he'll be like, I don't understand. I'm confused. I thought you were pissed at me. And I'm like, yeah, being angry about something you did doesn't change the love that I have for you at all times. Doesn't mean I don't want to be around you. It doesn't mean I don't want to hug you.
I love
it. You know what I mean? I go,
I've had the same conversation. I love it.
I can separate the fact that I'm angry at what you've done. That never wavers how much I love and adore you.
Yeah, I love it.
So, it took a while for him to understand that, because he was looking at like, being mad means you're not feeling me right now, or I don't deserve your time and attention.
Yeah.
But you always deserve my time and attention.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. You're a good dad. I appreciate that. I'm going to ask you one last question on this topic, then we're going to move on because there's so much I want to talk to you about. You had just thrown a comment in there prior about pretty much your relationship with your father is done. Is that door closed, or is that just slightly left there and later on something you could look into?
I think it's, look, there's the intellectual side of me that could tell you why I think it's best. Yeah. And there's the Boston side of me that's like, F that dude, man. You know what I mean? So what had happened, do you want to hear why? Yeah. So, as I mentioned, I was molested when I was a kid, and I made the unfortunate decision to watch the Michael Jackson documentary with those kids that were, allegedly abused by him. So when I watched it, it was the first time. Like, by the way, so I'm not one of those people that are bothered or hurt or in pain or always woe is me about what happened. It happened. It wasn't my fault. It was when I was a kid. Whatever. That guy's an asshole. Case closed, right? So, but I don't it's not something I carry around with me on need therapy or anything. So when I seen this, it was pretty profound, even for me, because I'm pretty resilient and tough skinned. It's just really hard to to keep me down. So when I watched it, I heard these guys my age saying things that I felt and that I went through when I was a young. And I was like, holy shit, I've never heard any other dudes talk like this or say these things. Like, you had to have had this done to you to say these things. Now, whether it's from Michael or somebody else, whatever, it's not for me to decide. But the fact that they were saying certain things, it's almost like it takes one to know one. You know what I mean? They were saying things that you would have to have gone through this traumatic event to be able to say the things that you're saying, right? We live in a world now where everyone can just talk the talk because they listen to conferences and podcasts and read books. And now, like back when we were younger, if somebody was like, said something, you'd be like, oh, that's a real one, because he really went through that shit, because you'd have to go through it to know, right? Now everybody can say, oh yeah, my life was tough because of this, and that. Yeah, that sounds like somebody else's life, right? So they were saying things that it broke me down. I never cry over this stuff. It broke me down. And I was like, oh my God. So I called my dad and we talked about it because he has experience with it too. So what happened was I've had a tough internal conflict with my feelings towards my mom because this happened throughout my life, right? And it was on her watch. So, so me and my dad would talk. We had a nice talk that night. We hung up. Then part 2 came on the next night. I watched that. Then two of the kids were like, yeah, I don't even have feelings for my mom anymore because of it. And I was like, oh my God, I've never heard no one talk about this either, right? I thought I was alone, right? I didn't know how to deal with it, my mom, because half of me is like, what an asshole for letting that happen to me. How could you not know that was happening right under your nose for 4 years? And then the other half of me is like, I'm her only son. I'm supposed to be there and care about her and take care of her. So I was always conflicted about what I want to be to my mom. So I called my dad the next day and he answered the phone. What, Clinton? I'm like, what's going on, Dad? You okay? And he goes, I'm really tired of being in the middle of this shit between you and your mother and sister. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And then what had happened was, coincidentally, 2 weeks earlier, I had made a post about a song that I made 4 years earlier for an anti-bullying campaign. I didn't know that the song had as much success as it had, and I just found out it has over 50 million streams on Spotify. And it was for a whole anti-bullying campaign that I did. So I was like, oh my God, I put a post up and I wrote in the post, when I was young, I was sexually abused, but here's what that did. It helped me write this song, blah, blah. So I talked about, I didn't get into depth about it. I didn't blame anybody. I just said, here's a bad thing that happened and here's how I turned it into something good to help other people. And then I basically just celebrated the success of that song and the good that it did. Apparently that night, my mom and sister just finally seen that post. So they call. So, when
Yeah.
like that it's really about you, but even though the rest of the world doesn't know. So my mom was seeing it and was offended that I wrote that I was molested online, calls my dad to complain. And it all coincidentally at the same time, me and my dad are having this talk because I'm watching this documentary. So he goes, "Why do you got to effing put shit on social media?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And he mentions that post. I'm like, "Dad, I did it because of this, blah, 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 this is that." So then he's pissed off. He hangs up. Oh, no, he says to me, "If I pay for a polygraph test, will you take it?" And I'm like, "Holy shit, are you serious? You're questioning me now?" And then so now we get to a big fight and we hang up. And I'm like, "You're dead to me." Now, I've never said anything mean to my dad in 20 years, ever, right? That's the first time I've ever said anything mean. So we hung up. And I started to walk out of the room angry. I paused literally at the door, and I was like, "I'm not going to let this happen again." 30 seconds go by. I call him back. I go, "Look, Dad." I go, "I didn't mean what I just said." I go, "I love you. You're my best friend. I don't want to have a falling out with you. I don't want you not in my life." I go, "I'm sorry that we just got heated with each other, but can we just not, and whatever's bothering you, we'll sort it out and we'll talk this through." So we start talking, and we end up talking for an hour, and it ends up turning into me listening to him and his feelings, which that's what most broken people do. They just want to keep dumping their brokenness on you, right? Even if you're broken or they're the cause of your brokenness, right? By the way, I'm not broken, but just saying. So, so we talk, and he's to the point that he's like, "I'll be the best patient you ever had." I'm like, "I don't want a patient. I want a dad." Right. So anyway, so we end up that call, and I'm thinking everything's good now. We squashed it. We're good. I talked him off the ledge. Close call. So then I don't know, 6-8 weeks goes by. He calls me one day and says, "Hey man, I just wanted to talk to you." I'm like, "Yeah, sure. What's up, Dad?" And then he goes, "I've been doing some self-inventory, and I've been thinking if I can forgive X and Z, X is his ex-wife who cheated on him, got herpes, and Z is the guy that stabbed his brother to death and murdered his brother." He goes, "If I can forgive those two, then I can forgive you." And in my mind, I want to say, "Are you fucking shitting me? You're putting me in the category with those guys?" But I didn't, because I know this is a broken dude, and I'm just letting him get off his chest what he needs to get off. Because guess what? It doesn't bother me more than my caring of letting him feel better. Do you know what I'm saying? So as he's talking, I'm just listening to him, vent for 15, 20 minutes. And then he goes, "So what do you think?" And he goes, "I forgive you." So he goes, "So what do you think?" And I go, Dad, if that's the stuff you needed to say to get off your chest, to get to a better place, all I care about is being in a good relationship with you. And I'm always here to listen, this, and that. And then he goes, "But what do you think?" And now I'm a very honest, matter of fact dude. I don't want to answer this question, but he's pushing me to answer it. So then I'm like, "Well, I don't know. I have no idea what I'm being forgiven for." Right. And he goes, and I go, "And by the way, being put in a category with someone that actually cheated on you, and then someone that murdered your best friend, brother," I go, "that's pretty ridiculous." I go, "You have to know how to separate and learn how to separate these things with that thing. And it's not all, everything that's bad doesn't go in the same category. A murderer doesn't go in the same category as the guy that ate your last cookie in the kitchen." So he goes, "Really? You don't know what you did wrong?" And I'm like, "No, not really, Dad." And then he goes, "How about when you said, 'I'm fucking dead to you'?" And I'm like, "Dad, we already had a long conversation about this. I obviously didn't mean it. I don't want you. You're not dead to me. I love you. And we had this conversation. I don't know why you're still carrying this." But Jeff, I'm sure there's a lot of people that in the moment you can talk them off the ledge and everything seems good. And then 5 minutes later, 5 days later, they get in their own head. And it's like you didn't even have that conversation, right?
Yeah.
And it's like there's a whole bunch of people like that in the world. And that's how he is. He goes to himself. He wallows in all of his misery. He starts thinking about things he could have said or things that maybe he didn't respond to the way he wanted to respond to, or now he's overanalyzing, overthinking things. And it's ridiculous, right? And I'm like, yeah, Dad, everything's cool on my side. I thought we were good. So then we end up talking some more, blah, 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 blah. We end up going at each other. And I just realized, you know what, man, like, this is not a good dude to have in my life. And I'm a real big ambassador. This is one of my monikers, is defend happy. And what do I mean by defend happy? Is that most people in their life, you know, they're chasing this fictitious happiness or these things that they think will make them happy. A lot of times they're missing the happiness that's right in front of them, AKA your kids. Yeah. And they're so busy chasing these lofty goals and dreams and stuff that they think will make them happy. More often than not, even when you do achieve those goals, you know, it didn't bring you the happiness you thought it would bring you. And I have this quote in my book that says, just because you've made your dreams come true doesn't mean that you've escaped your nightmares. And I think that a lot of people trick themselves thinking, if I can only make this happen, I'll be so happy, it'll overshadow the trauma or the hurt or the pain, right? And it's like, no, man, it's just like putting a Band-Aid on something. It's like putting like a napkin over a piece of shit. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, you don't see the shit right now, but inevitably it's going to stink. It's going to smell at the house. So I think that's, you know, a big problem of his. And I realized that, you know, having somebody broken, look, I was an awesome son. I did everything to make things work. He didn't even really deserve me to come back to him, to be honest, when I was 20, for what he put me and my family through and leaving us at 5 years old. But regardless, if you had shit that happened to you, I'm being the good guy by having empathy and understanding that maybe you weren't equipped to deal with that. But at the end of the day, you should have been the good fucking guy and realize you got a son that's going to end up going through the same shit you went through if you're not manning up and being there for him, which he did. Yeah. Thanks, Dad. You know what I mean? So, you know, I gave you my best, and I gave you more than you deserved. And you know what? Now I got my own family, my own kids, and I can't have brokenness around me that disrupts or interferes with me and my family's happy. So it's my job now as a man and a father to defend me and my family's happiness. And if you're doing something that's, you know, causing issues with that happiness, then you got to go. You know what I mean? Yeah. So even if that means you're my dad, you should know better.
No, there's a lot. There's so many layers to that, right? There's so many layers to that, man.
10 hours about this, and I'm sure there's some people that'll watch and say, that's not cool. Family's forever. Oh, you know, you did your dad. It's like, you're not in my shoes. I'm not in your shoes. No. I would never listen. If someone's gone as long as I've gone and done as much as I've done, and they've got to their edge, at some point, man, like, no, family doesn't mean forever. It doesn't. You know what I mean?
I say something. I've said this in quite a few of my podcasts, and it works on the word purpose. I always say everybody has a purpose in your life. Whether you go to a grocery store and you're having a shit day and somebody walks by you and gives you a smile and that changes your mindset for that day, everybody has a purpose. And whether they're in your life for 5 years, 10 years, you got to appreciate that time they were with you, try to learn from it, try to understand it, try to see why they were there for you in that period. And then you move on. So I do see where you're coming from, and I do understand where you're coming from, and wherever obviously the future holds. I mean, we're having this conversation 10 years from now. You could be back and have a stronger relationship. He might find his shit, and hopefully one day he will. But I do understand, because you do have your family to protect and focus on. So I appreciate everything you're saying. It's true, it's real, right?
Yeah.
Let's dive into. There's a whole bunch of things I wanted to talk about today. Let's dive into.
Today was like a Jeff talks about dads with his guests. That's what today's show is.
Let's talk about. Okay, so I was watching a whole bunch of videos on you, trying to get a good understanding of you, because you got so many layers. You've done so much in your 41 years, which is pretty amazing. Starting off as a boy, you would take, like, I was watching this video, and let's run by that. You would take parts of a music song or something. That's pretty much your intro into the music that you would enjoy. Then you would replay it and start mixing it. Let's start with that little journey quickly.
Yeah. So when I was a kid, as you know, what my childhood was like. So I was very lonely. I lived in my bedroom a lot. So my radio was my best friend. Everything I know, I learned from my radio. So I got a song title that too. So I would hear songs, like the extended versions of songs, and I would take my mom's dual cassette deck, and I would record the musical part and just loop it. And then I'll just try to start writing my own songs to that section. So that was my introduction into music. My mom was super into music. whether she's cleaning the house or we're riding in the back seat of her hot leather seats in the summer to the beach. She was always listening to Hall & Oates, Commodores, Michael Jackson, Prince, 80s music. So I think my mom put music in me. And then, so that's how I got into music. And then I just started, winning all the local talent shows locally, being a rapper, a dancer, beatboxer, DJ, producer. I'd be 12 years old and the 18-year-old kids would come over and I would be DJing because I broke into someone's house and stole some turntables. I told you I was a criminal when I was young. So I was that guy. And then I became like kind of really popular locally, and I produce all the local artists and win the talent shows, and I'll be on local radio stations. And that's how I really kind of, the quick like 10-second, how I developed and evolved locally in Boston. And then when I would make remixes and stuff of popular songs, I befriended the local DJ at the radio station, the big station in Boston, and I would hear him tell record executives on the phone, "Hey, my buddy Clinton Sparsy is really great. You should check this out." And they'd be like, yeah, cool. "Hey, man, you gonna play my record?" So when I realized how important he was to them, I was like, oh shit, I gotta be a DJ because they'll want to be my friend if I'm important to them. So that's basically the cheat code I figured out to breaking into the music business at a young age, because I'm trying to get people to hear my beats. I'm trying to like get them to hear my mixtapes, to get them to come to the studio, and no one gives a shit. I'm just this white kid from Boston trying to make hip hop, at a time when it's like all New York and all black. You know what I mean? So it's like the opposite of everything that I am, right? So that's how I broke in. So I built my own syndicated radio show, and then this was 1999 when the music industry wasn't really super hip to the internet. So I lied and would call record labels and be like, "Oh, I have a super cracking online radio show. You know the internet?" Yeah, so I have a huge following. When you have artists come to Boston to go visit the radio station, they got to come be on my show too. So I knew that they wouldn't know, right? But they also were always looking for outlets to promote their artists. So I had everybody from Eminem to Wu-Tang to Cameron to Talib Kweli, like endless amounts of people come to my mom's house in my studio that I built in the basement. And that's how I started my music career. And then I'd make mixtapes and I'd have all these rappers come through and rap on my beats. And I'd have
let's go back there. So they would actually come to you had everything set up in your basement of your mom's house. So you had all these massive stars at that point coming there and doing their interviews and stuff like that.
I had massive tour buses pulling in my
That's crazy
my neighborhood that people would be like, who are these tour buses? Yeah. So they'd come to my house and I'd work with them. And, I've remained friends with that's pretty much how I built my network. And like most of the people now, I met Pusha through that. And I was just on the phone with Pusha for an hour the other night. You know what I mean? So it's like all of these relationships I built and maintained. And then I knew, okay, I got all these people that know me now. What do I do to make myself so valuable? Which, by the way, I talk about in my book, How to Win Big in the Music Business, a value add. How do I become so valuable that it would behoove them to be my friend, right? So what I did is I built my syndicated radio show to be in 22 markets. But prior to that, what I did is I put myself on a station in Boston, Connecticut, New York, and Baltimore. So I'd be in 4 different stations in 4 different states live every week. So when they would do promo runs to promote their album, they would go down the East Coast. So when they would see me in Boston, then they'd see me in Connecticut, then they'd see me in New York, then they'd see me in Baltimore. They'd be like, "God, man, you're everywhere." And I'm like, "Man, get familiar, bro. That's why you need to fuck with me, because I'm the guy that's going to help break your shit." So now I become one of the most important DJs because I'm on all these radio stations. I'm cracking in the streets on my mixtapes. I'm one of the biggest mixtape DJs. I own the biggest mixtape website that's breaking new artists and DJs. I now become a host on E! News. So now I'm a global television show where I'm introducing.
How old are you when this is all happening?
This is all in 2008. So 2004. So 2000 is when I started. Around 2002 is when I really was like, okay, I'm solidified now. Everybody knows me. I'm already winning radio. It took me.
So you're like 20 years old, give or take.
Yeah, it took me so I made a 5-year plan. That 5 years, people will at least know me enough to take my phone call, right? Yeah. That was my plan. In under 2 years, I won new mixtape DJ of the year in New York City. I won Mix Show DJ of the year, East Coast DJ of the year in Puerto Rico and Dominican Republic at like what was the Grammys for DJs at the time. So like, dude, like in 2 years I destroyed like my 5-year plan. I'm already working with the biggest names in the industry. So then by 2004, I built the world's biggest e-commerce mixtape website. We made $5 million the first year. That's how big we were and successful.
In 2004, that was a lot of money back then.
Yeah, I conceived a website that's really huge right now called World Star Hip Hop with my boy Q. I then dropped my first album, like legitimate album, in 2005. So in 5 years, like I'm already right, and then so now I'm killing it. So like for those like 2-3 years, like to 2004 to 8, I'm just traveling the world, like running the streets with mixtapes, DJing, killing it. Like I'm P Diddy's tour DJ. I helped Eminem launch Shade 45, all that stuff. And then in 2008 is when E! News called, my buddy Ben Lyons. And they were like, hey, would you want to be a host on E! News? And at that time, you know, I'm super hip hop dude, right? And I'm like, why would I be on this Paris Hilton and Britney Spears? Why would I go on that, right? So then I'm like, yeah, I'll try it. So I fly out there, you know, the day before they gave me like 3 things to talk about. I show up, they mic me up, I go on camera. I don't even know this is live. Like this is live, right? So they go on, like, all right, you're going to talk about these things when this guy asks you. I'm like, all right, cool. And I'm so used to being in front of the camera and stuff anyways, and I'm a radio host or whatever. So I go on there and I say, yeah, blah, 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 blah. And they're like, and so the camera's off. They're like, holy shit, that was amazing. You killed it. Can you come back next week? I'm like, yeah, whatever. So I come back like, you know, I'm coming back for multiple weeks. And then finally I'm like, do I have a job? Am I hired here? Like, and they were like, oh yeah, we'll give you paperwork. So then I had to like, by the way, I bought my own plane ticket to fly out every week from Boston to LA every week to do my shit. I bought my own plane ticket every Saturday to fly to Baltimore to do my show in Baltimore. And by the way, I don't have money. You know what I mean? I'm broke. I'm figuring it out. Which I talk about that in my book too, because you know the biggest excuses people make are like, I don't have connections, I don't have any money, everybody's a hater in my neighborhood, you know, I don't have big enough following. All these excuses that people come up with, bro, they're all just excuses. You put your own limitations on yourself, right? So then I go, I'm in Hollywood, and I'm like, how does this help my goal? So I'm like, holy shit, I'm gonna be able to bring hip hop to Hollywood, because it doesn't exist. I understand at that point that a 50 Cent thinks it's cool to hang out with a Paris Hilton, and a Paris Hilton wants to hang out with 50 for street cred, but they don't know each other, and they don't know that about each other. But I do. So now I become the conduit, which I've always been kind of the connector, like putting Ludacris with Fall Out Boy, and I was always the bridge between like BET and MTV, right? So now I did that with Hollywood. So now I'm on there talking about, you know, Pharrell and Ray J and Little John and all these people on E! That never talked about hip hop ever until I got there. So I basically introduced hip hop and Hollywood and merged those worlds together. And then I did one more even better, is I went to the chairman of NBC Universal and I was like, this is crazy. You guys have a global platform and you're running around chasing people at parties to put on your network instead of creating your own biggest party in the world in Las Vegas, where it becomes a destination party for everyone in the world to want to come to because they think they're going to be celebrities there, and you can have celebrities and have your own exclusive content to put on your own show, promoting your own party, making your own money. And then they were like, yeah, how do we do that? I was like, give me a week. So I got in touch with like the president of Hard Rock Hotel in Vegas. I put together a $1.4 million deal. Where now we were all there every Saturday. There was signage all over the casino of E! News, E! Network. We had a party called Smash Time Saturdays every Saturday where me, Kat Sala, Ben Lyons, Sal Masakela, and I DJ'd. By the way, that $1.4 million wasn't for E! I brokered that for me and like us, who was hosting the party. So yeah, we had the biggest party in Las Vegas for 2.5 years. I was the first resident DJ to have billboards all around Vegas and on taxis and everything. That was before like the EDM wave came in. And then, yeah, dude, like just, I mean, I could go on and on and on, but like just sounds like I'm trying to say how awesome I am. But I've done so many things throughout my career that has shaped and shifted culture as we know it today. And if you go to my website, by the way, I sent it to you, clintonsparks.com. and you look at the timeline of my career.
I was doing that this morning.
By the way, when I do shit, I move on. I don't even think about it again.
Yeah.
So when we were putting it together, I'm really like, every single year for the past like 18 years, I've done things every year that would be one thing that somebody built an entire business off of or talks about for the rest of their life as their claim to fame. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, I don't even believe it's me. And the reason I don't have a big head or I take it that way is because ever since I started or since I was young, I've always treated myself as a brand, and I was the CEO of that brand. I never looked at Clinton Sparks as me, the guy. So the good thing about separating your person to your brand is that you can detach emotion. So if somebody like thinks you suck, you take that as great market research to improve on the brand. Instead of saying, fuck you, bro, or getting emotional over it. If someone thinks you're awesome, you're just like, great, I'm doing great with my business. I should be doing more of that rather than like, yeah, I'm the man, everybody loves me. You know what I mean? So like, I'm an overachiever, I'm a workaholic, I'm a perfectionist, and I really have look, Dad, I hit a home run syndrome. So like every day I have to like outdo myself yesterday, and I never relish, which I need to start doing more of. I never really relish in the greatness that I've accomplished, and I do not think I'm as awesome as other people think I am.
You're humble. You're humble. I know you're talking like you're showing your accomplishments now, and somebody just hears everything you've accomplished, but you're humble in a way like we had connected off IG, Instagram, and just your talk, you're humble, but you're smart. You know how to get to people. So your marketing and your the way you present yourself is just is very professional. But once you get to know you, you're just an average dude, right? So that makes people want to attract to you, which is so important. When was the one moment? I'm sure you've been asked this before. When was the one moment you're like, "Fuck, I've made it. I'm here." And I know you're always making it to different levels. Obviously, we're going to talk about a whole bunch of stuff that you're going to be coming out with. But when was that one moment you said, "You know what? I've made it." Working with that one artist, that one person, where it's like, I'm here now. I've established myself.
Well, in my career,
yeah,
I never. I don't think I made it. You know what I mean? I'm not blind enough to not think that I've been successful, but I don't think there was like I don't know. And I know it sounds weird because someone's like, dude, you're an asshole. Of course there's something like, but like, I don't have like this is when I knew I made it, because it's just been like such so many moments that have attributed to my success and attributed to the makeup of who I am today. That there's not one single thing, but I will say, I feel like I made it as a man when my son said, "You make everything happy." So as a person and a man,
I got a big smile with that, and I see your smile. That's like it's infectious because you're saying that and you're glowing with that, which is so special. Let's dive into your book. When did you decide I'm gonna put pen to paper? I'm gonna start getting this process and everything I've learned I want to spread on. Let's start diving at it. When did that whole process start?
Oh, you mean this book right here?
Yes, that book. We're gonna
written by Shark Tank's Damon John.
We're gonna talk about that too.
So what made me write it? Well, throughout my entire career, I've seen how I was made to feel. I see how people treated me, and there was a lot of jerks in the music industry, and just in the successful world overall.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people feel like they got to stomp on other people to be great, right? And like when they're great, they know it, and they feel like they're greater than you. And in order to remain great, they have to make you not great or make you feel not great, which I totally am against that. Even in my book, I talk about helping others be great is being great. So, I've always thought like, man, one day, so from my whole career, basically, I've always like, I want to start a business one day that's built on decency, that treats people good, that actually cares about people, because I care about people, which is why, like you said, I understand. The reason I understand is because I give a shit. You know what I mean? And I listen to people, like their fears, their dreams, their vulnerabilities, their worries, their fantasies, their insecurities, right? So when a few years ago, I was like, man, I should just write a book to try to help people. Well, when I started kind of seeing the insurgence of, you know, webinars and like funnels and conferences and books and podcasts, and I was podcasting in the early 2000s before podcasting was a thing. You know what I mean? I was already putting my shows on Apple Music early 2000s. So when podcasting, when the people I used to interview now are hosts of their own podcasts, I was like, this is what a crazy flip. Like everybody and anybody can now just jump online and be like, I'm a host of a show now. You know what I mean? And that goes with every industry. Like things get saturated, like whether it's a rapper or an athlete or whatever, it's like everybody's that now. And it's like, oh, here we go, right? So I was like, I've been around long enough to see everybody from athletes to rappers to influencers to viners come and go, right? And I've seen them get, you know, chewed up and spit out. And I've seen them get used, and I've seen them been misled and misguided and misinformed. They've been miseducated. And I've always cared and always bothered me. And I've always wanted to, like, I wish I could just always talk to everybody and tell them that's the wrong thing to do. Dude, stop doing that. Or don't listen to that guy. Or you're going to make a mistake if you do this. So I figured the best way to do it, now that the whole world was, you know, so enamored and fascinated with learning and listening to people give them game online, that was the other thing that was pissing me off. So many people were pumping you with fake inspiration. And like, it's like, what have you even done, dude? Why is anyone even listening to you? Right? So, so that's what made me want to write the books. It was like, I know I actually can help, and I know I actually care. And I've actually done everything you can do in the music business. So it's kind of almost like there is no other me. You know what I mean? There's other successful people in the music business at specific things, but like it's far and few between like someone that's done everything. You know what I mean? From being an artist, a songwriter, producer, a DJ, manager, publisher, dancer, you know, director, like, executive, like everything. And I've wanted all of it. You know what I mean? So, and I understand people, and I understand what people want and what they need to feel, right? So, you know, we live in a world now where all the avatar that wants to become successful in the music business, all they care about is how do I get rich? How do I get famous? How do I go viral? How do I get a deal, right? That's all they care about. So I know that. And I know that a lot of that is like it's the wrong frame of mind. Like you're thinking of the wrong things. You're thinking of running to the end zone before you caught the ball. You know what I mean? So what I wanted to do was set them up with the right state of mind and the psychology and the proven winning formula that I've used time and time again to continue to win, and that other winners continue to use to be successful. And I wanted to basically make that like the medicine in the baby food, so that I'm teaching you how to do it right while giving you the information that I know that you're trying to get. So when it's like, you know, how do you make money? Cool, I'll show you that. But you don't know, as I'm teaching you that, I'm also teaching you how to be a better person and how to teach how to network with people, how to build better relationships, how to follow up, how to understand how to pivot. So all of these things are in this book. And what makes me most proud is that the book is very like thin. It's very matter of fact. It's very like all the information you need to really get started and have tremendous advantage over someone that doesn't read the book.
It's essentially a handbook for instructions on.
Right. You keep going back and reading it because it's one of those things that's just like, oh yeah, oh shit, this is what he was talking about. Now I understand why he was saying I need to do this. You know what I mean? So it's almost like being a dad. You know what I mean? To everybody. It's like I've always kind of been the dude that like was like had a big brother kind of vibe. You know what I mean? So like if I even like see a girl that's doing something dumb, I'm like, man, you shouldn't do this, and here's why. You know what I mean? Like I'm not the guy that's like trying to get that ass. I'm the guy that's trying to protect you from giving up that ass. You know what I mean? To the wrong people. You know what I mean? So, you know, I've just always kind of been a protector and someone that cares about people making mistakes or getting hurt or hurting others.
Damon John, how did that connection work towards the book? Obviously, you have a relation with him. When did you guys connect for the book? So what part of the book he did the forward writing to it, or like what do you do? What part of the book did he do?
Yeah, he wrote the forward, which is really fascinating and flattering. You know, he said a lot of really great things about me, things you'd want your dad to say about you, right? Yeah. So, he wrote a lot of great things. And then two of the things he talked about and that are really important is about a mentor, and about like not listening to people that have not accomplished the things that you're trying to accomplish. That, and then he kind of went on about why he feels and endorses why he feels there is no other Clinton that could give you this game that I was giving. The hardest part about writing this book is that I could have wrote a book this thick. You know what I mean?
Of course, yeah.
It's really distilling it down because like I want to give you so much game, and because I understand so many different state of minds and the psychology of so many different people, that like I know when I write this what everyone in the room's reaction is going to be to it, but I can't answer everybody in the book. You know what I'm saying? So, which is why I launched my new show. My show's out now. It's called Win Big with Clinton Sparks. I've had Damon John on there. I've had Offset on there. I've had a lot of fascinating people on here. That the show is basically to teach you how to win big in music, in business, and in your own personal life. Because I think I've really excelled a lot there too in helping people see that they're in their own way, or see the things that are preventing them from having their own better life, which then will help you be more successful in business. But a lot of times, like, again, people are going after stage 5 without realizing 1, 2, 3, 4 is what's keeping you from getting to 5.
Yeah.
One of the things that was really powerful that I had spoke to somebody recently. I was speaking to a couple, and they were not in a good place. And, I was kind of making them realize what they were both doing wrong, or what they were both doing that was affecting the other one negatively.
Yeah.
And the woman at the end was like, thank you so much. This was so helpful, man. I can't believe like how much you got through to us. She goes, I guess now with your advice, I'm going to start this long journey to healing. And I said, no. You got it all wrong. She's like, what do you mean? I go, it's not a long journey. It's merely a decision. I go, You're going to get up from this table right now and decide. Everything is different. You're not going to like work through it. You're not going to have relapses. You're going to decide right now that shit doesn't matter. Like, imagine if I went on my whole life thinking, I was molested. And I blamed everything wrong on my brokenness of holding on to something that wasn't my fucking fault. I didn't do it. You know what I mean? It's not my fault that happened.
Yeah.
So why would I hold on to that? That guy should be going the rest of his life being sad that he did that to somebody, not the victim. Like, I'm not going to be a victim for the rest of my life. I was a victim in the moment. If you broke your leg and you had a cast on for you broke your foot a few weeks back, right? If you break your foot like you did, weeks back, you're not going to cry 2 years later from your foot being broken 2 years ago. Like, you got over it. The shit wasn't your fault. And even if it was your fault, it's over. It's a thing of the past. What do you say? Oh man, if only I didn't break my foot 2 years ago. Like, it's really your mind that's making you hold on to this shit. That same power your mind has to hold on to it and cry over it is the same mind that can say, fuck you, traumatic thoughts. Like, get out of my head. Like, my life is happy now. And to defend my happy, you got to go. Right. So, yeah, man. So, Damon John, I think I went way past you asking me what Damon John's involvement was, but he wrote the foreword. We have a long-standing relationship. He talks about in the book how we met several years ago and what impressed him about me and what impresses him about me today, and why he felt like I shouldn't put the book out without him writing the foreword.
When you talk about mentors, and I'm a strong believer in this as well, you circulate yourself around people that you want to be, or people that have achieved what you want to achieve. In your life, if you could name your top 2 or 3 people that really, and there's probably been more, but that really were your mentors to get to the next level, because you obviously had some. Who would you put there on that pedestal?
So ironically enough, I don't have anybody.
You don't have any mentors, huh?
No. And what else is ironic too is that we've been on this call for so long that the sun has now risen, and I'm now realizing that my room is not conducive to doing a podcast while the sun is rising. No, I didn't have any mentors that helped guide me and Okay, you know what? Actually, I always say this answer that I've never had me, but I did actually. So they weren't my mentors; they were my role models in the sense of who I thought I was supposed to be as a man because who they played in movies.
That's
So
interesting.
Sylvester Stallone
Okay.
and, and like
Which movie?
just Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah.
Sylvester Stallone was a big role model for me because when my dad wasn't around, I used to pretend in my mind he was my dad.
That's crazy.
So
Okay. That's interesting.
he always played roles where he was a stand-up guy. He, kept people honest. Made sure people did right by what they're supposed to do, and loved his family. So that in my mind is what a man was supposed to be.
Yeah.
So I modeled myself in being a good guy and caring about my family and doing the right thing, outside of when I was a criminal, but doing the right thing by watching Sylvester Stallone. So, and then as music wise, Teddy Riley, the producer, his music is what made me want to become a producer. But I obviously didn't know him. I'm friends with him now, but back then I didn't know him.
Have you connected with Sylvester?
Have I what?
Sylvester Stallone. Have you connected with him? Are you friends with him?
I never have, and I think that's the one person that I don't think I want to meet him because I get way too emotional, man. Like he has no idea what he means to me. He was basically my dad in my head growing up. You know what I mean? So I would move like him. Yeah, like I would probably break down if I ever met him in person.
That's pretty amazing.
And it would be annoying for him. He'd be like, I don't even know this dude. And he's going, what the fuck's going on?
I mean, as an actor, I'm sure that's a huge accomplishment. It's a huge honor that somebody would look at those moments, and especially like the Rocky movies and all those stuff. I'm thinking of, I'm playing movies in my head of Sylvester as you're talking, and I'm getting what you're saying, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah. So yeah, I looked up to him as like a father figure. Even Over the Top. You ever seen the movie Over the Top?
Yeah.
When he was the dad that really cared about his father.
Yeah, with the truck. Yeah, we're the same age. I mean, very close, similar. So we probably have the same era of movies and stuff like that. There's a couple of things I want to ask you quickly too, just before we head off today, because I've taken a lot of your time today. You said originally you had that 5-year plan. You flew through that plan. Do you have in your mind at this point in your career where you want to be in another 5 years? Or you just take it year by year because things are happening so quickly?
I mean, every day is a winning day for me. So most people, when they make a 5-year plan, it's because they're thinking to themselves, this is where I'd like to be. Here's the success I'd like to have. Here's who I want to be. But I'm all of that already. So I like who I am. My success has made me happy. I like the things that I do. So I don't really, just to continue to help people, to continue to win big. And by winning big means, whether that's, teaching my kids something, whether it's being a good guy to my wife and making her happy, whether it's helping somebody else with, like with my book and my course, or on my new show, Win Big, with Clinton Sparks on my Twitch channel, twitch.tv.
We're going to talk about that. We're going to do a promo for that. Yeah.
But yeah, I really enjoy helping people, and I want to build more businesses. I have a bunch of other businesses that we didn't talk about that would be too long to talk about, but that are also in the spirit of helping others, bringing good times or helping them with their life. So yeah, my 5-year plan is the rest of my life plan, which is to continue to make people happy, continue to win, and continue to do the right thing.
We didn't talk about, you have a daughter now. You said a 9-month-old daughter? Did I get that right?
19 months.
How was that experience? Because having a daughter changes a lot of stuff as well. How was that experience? Let's talk about that quickly.
I thought I was one and done, to be honest. I thought I had Jack was my best friend, and oddly enough, I thought to myself, like, I can't imagine having another kid. Like, the thing, like, how do you love them all the same, right? Before you have them, right? But it's like, he's my best friend. I feel weird having another son because I've done everything with him. I gave him all the nicknames. Like, I can't do the same stuff with him. That'd be whack. That's what I was thinking. So having a daughter was like, man, she's so. So no, it's amazing. Like, she's so beautiful. She's so happy. I always say this, like, you don't know the woman that you marry or that you're going to have a kid with. You don't know what kind of person they're going to be when you have a kid with them, right? So I don't think enough men really honor or celebrate, like, phew, she's an awesome mom. You know what I mean? Like when you finally realize, and fortunately, Sophie, my daughter, my wife, Juliana is awesome mom. So proud of her. And my daughter is just like, we're just a happy house. So she's always happy. So she's always happy. We're always singing. We're always dancing. The only time someone's ever miserable is my 16-year-old, just being a 16-year-old, walks downstairs like, what's up? I'm like, shut up, dude. Life's awesome. You know what I mean? Like, but he's like, whatever, Dad. Going, whatever. So, it's awesome. I love having a daughter, and I love being a girl dad.
I love it. I everything you're saying resonates with me, because I wake up every day and it's like I'm in a happy place. My son's I got a 14-year-old daughter, exact same thing. She's started high school. I'll walk in and she's like, hey, Dad. She's going through that stage right now. And then I have my son, which is the pure opposite, where as soon as he wakes up, he's 12 years old, and the first thing he's got to do is give me a hug and a kiss. He goes to bed. He will not go to bed without giving me a hug and a kiss. So they're pure opposite, but you get the best of both worlds, right? So, I wake up every day, same thing, Clinton. I wake up with a smile on my face, which is all you can ask for.
There hasn't been me and my son, like you said, as soon as he wakes up, the first thing we do is hug.
Yeah.
Before he goes to bed, I go to his room, or he comes to mine, and we hug.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
You feel like the day didn't finish or start until that happens, right? In my entire career, as much as I've traveled, even when I was on the road, there was never a day. I've only missed saying goodnight to my son 5 times his entire life, 16 years. That's because I happened to be on a plane to Asia when it was bedtime. You know what I mean? Something like that. But we talk on the phone twice a day when I'd be gone.
That is awesome.
The real thing we didn't talk about, which we're not going to talk about, but was the 2-year custody battle, to get him, because I divorced me and his mother divorced. You want
to talk about that quickly?
It's way too long, man. But
can you bring it to a short little story? You can't tease us like that.
There is no short story.
There is no story.
On a podcast, but so on his 13th birthday, I went to get him, and he was with me for the week, because we had just split. We've been split for a year. I got an apartment up the street from our house, so 1 week he'd be with me, 1 week he'd be with her. And then I also had an apartment in LA. So when I wasn't there, I'd be in LA, and he called me, he's like, you got to come get me. And I was like, yeah, I'm coming to get you tomorrow anyways, because we're going to spend the week together. We spent the week together, and I was like, all right, I got to bring you home. He goes, Dad, I'm never going home again. I go, what are you talking about? He goes, you can't bring me back home. I'm like, what are you talking about? We got to go home. And then I didn't understand what was going on. Got his mother on the phone. She got mad at me. And then he's been with me since that day. Then had to get an emergency custody order on Monday. And then it was 2.5 years of the most, if any man is watching this right now, I went through a divorce. It was the most stressing, depressing 2.5 years of my life. I mean, I would never do this, but I understand where the thought of hurting yourself would happen going through that. As ridiculous as that is to say, and I don't condone it, and that there's nothing worth hurting yourself. And, once you come out of it, you realize, what was I thinking, right? But I understand when you get to that point, why that would cross your mind. Because, there was a point I thought I was losing my son. I was losing everything. I was homeless, man. I came from nothing. And I built myself to, in a $1 million house, doing all these great things. And, it's all being taken away now, right? For nothing. Just because I didn't do anything wrong. You know what I mean? And it's so then anyways, I'm coming home to $20,000 lawyer bills, and it's our whole savings is being drained. My son's she's turning my son against me. My house is being taken away from me for nothing. You know what I mean? Just because she has issues. I went through that, but I would sleep on the stoop in the pouring rain to get 1 minute look at my son. You know what I mean? So if I'm going to do that, that I'm going to fight to a finish to make sure my son is good. We went through that fight, and then I ended up winning custody, and he's been with me. And it's, to be honest, he said it himself. He goes, Dad, if you didn't do this and I didn't live with you, I'd probably be doing drugs. I'd probably be a loser back in Boston. Thank you for caring enough and doing this, because my life is awesome now.
It's amazing. I love it. I always ask Two little questions before we end off. If you were to pass today in a couple words, how would you want to be remembered by your family, your kids, your wife?
Clinton made everything happy.
And I knew you were going to say that at your sign. I love it. Simple, sweet, honest. If you had a superpower, what would it be?
I think I do have a superpower.
What is it?
I think that superpower is empathy and caring and understanding everybody, not just my way of understanding, which helps me in business too, because I can get into a room with 5 people from 5 different industries, and they'd all look at each other like, what are we in this room for? It makes no sense that JetBlue's in a room with, Nabisco and Rick Ross. You know what I mean? It's like, I'd be the one that would understand what all of them, where they've been, where they are, where they need to go, and what they can pull from each other. And I can also understand all their language and fluently be able to translate to each one of them. So that comes from the reason I excel in business like that is because of excelling as a human in life, which is caring about people and understanding different psychology and different demographics and cultures. So I think that is my superpower, to be honest.
I love it. This has been an amazing venture. I appreciate you jumping on earlier today to be on the Jeff Knows Inc. podcast. You're an amazing person.
You DM'd me at 4:30 saying, see you in an hour and a half. And I was like, oh, shoot, I thought it was at 9. And then, so I got up, I got ready, do what I do in the morning. And then you hit me and say, oh, you're right, it is 9. And I'm like, oh, dude, let's just do it now. At the same time, you're like, let's just do it now.
You're the best, brother. I appreciate you as a father. I appreciate you as a human. I appreciate you us connecting. I mean, this is just, you're a wonderful person. You're doing amazing. You're a wonderful person. Just keep doing what you're doing. I know you've done a lot. And I'm just, as our conversation's going on this last hour and a half we've been on, I'm just looking at, I look at myself and I think there's so much more I got to still do in this world. And I look at you and I feel like you're just starting. There's so much more you're going to do. And it might not be the music industry. It might be just impacting people's lives, or there's so much more you're going to do. You're from fatherhood to impacting people, to putting a smile on people. You're infectious. You I'm talking to you and it's just this energy and this glow and this honesty. And like you said, happy, making people happy. And I think that's, you're on your way with that, but I think you have a long journey of how many people you're going to affect and touch. So just keep doing what you're doing, man. Just keep everything positive, keep the positive vibes, man. I appreciate you, brother.
Thanks, Jeff. Canadians are my favorite people, and you're up in the ante right now. Why I love Canadians so much.
I'm just being honest, man. I'm listening to you, and I'm just like there's so much more to happen, and I'm excited to see your journey. I'm excited to see. I always feel like I'm never, and that's, I think, as an entrepreneur, I've always been where even when I accomplish something, I think I've accomplished a lot in my life, but I've always feel like there's so much more. I have goals. I think there's so much more to where you're going, brother. And like I said, I can't stress enough. I appreciate you. On our show notes, I'm going to put all the information how to get a hold of Clinton, how to pick up his book. I apologize. Pick up his book, his shows, his business. There's so much layers. I'm going to try to help promote you as much as I can.
By the way, the book is free. The book is free, by the way. So
we're going to get it out to everybody, brother.
WinBigInMusic.com. WinBigInMusic.com.
Thank you so much, brother.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jeff. Take care, buddy.
That's a wrap, everyone. Thank you to Clinton Sparks for taking the time out of his busy schedule to be a guest on our show. What a wonderful story. Inspiring individual with a great future. Accomplished so much, but still so much still to accomplish. If you guys enjoyed this episode as much as I did, tell your friends, tell your family, spread the word. We're trying to build something special here. Do a review. 5 stars would be absolutely amazing. Until next week, everybody, keep moving forward.